stuff that you do to Elizabeth every day you can do to me.
The firm springiness.
A decimated battlefield, fallen knights, and a tale of 7 warriors so powerful that they're practically myths. Buckle up, because if you think you know power levels, the 7 deadly sins are about to rewrite the rulebook. Today we dive into a world teetering on the edge of chaos, where an ousted princess, a lecherous bar owner, and a talking pig might be the last hope against a corrupt regime. Welcome to the action-packed roller coaster that is the 7 deadly sins. Episode 1. It all starts in a time gone by, outside the realm of lions. Alioni, a mere squire at the time, is walking through a ravaged land with an older knight. They stand amidst a graveyard of holy knights, warriors of immense power, mind you, slain in what could only be described as the blink of an eye. By who? You guessed it, a group known only as the 7 deadly sins. These aren't your Sunday school sins. We're talking about 7 battle-hardened legends who've basically become boogeymen for grown knights. Fast forward a decade, and we're now near Kane's village. Among rustling fields, a cumbersome figure in full armor lurches about. A mysterious rust knight, you say. Meanwhile, the locals hang out at the Boar Hat Bar, sipping on what's touted as fantastic booze, but dealing with food that's universally recognized as, well, pretty terrible. Now, the atmosphere in this bar takes a 180 when a patron bursts in, yammering about having seen this rust knight. Another patron dismisses it as a tale to scare kids straight, taking the chance to give us a history lesson, including their grandmaster a decade ago. Sounds like these are guys you wouldn't want to cross paths with, or would you? Cue dramatic entry. Hawk, the bar's resident talking pig. Yes, you heard that right. A talking pig announces he can smell rust. As if on cue, the door creaks open, and in stumbles our clunky rust knight. But get this, the armor clatters to the floor, revealing an unconscious young woman inside. Who is she? Our ever-chivalrous bar owner, after verifying her gender in a way that irks Hawk, offers her a room. When she awakens, she's welcomed with a meal that even she admits is bad, but chokes down tearfully, stating it's still delicious. It turns out she's in search of the 7 deadly sins. But why? Suddenly, Alioni shows up outside with his band of knights, and he's not playing games. Demanding the rust knight be turned over, his warnings about underestimating the 7 deadly sins fall on deaf ears. Amidst the chaos, our mystery woman tries to escape, but she's spotted. Alioni calls for reinforcements by the name of Twigo. A chase ensues, during which Hawk makes a spectacular intervention, taking down the knights like dominoes. Cornered, the young woman finally reveals her mission. She's not just anybody. She's Elizabeth, the 3rd princess of lions, and she needs the 7 deadly sins to thwart a coup by the holy knights. Hawk's confused. Aren't the holy knights supposed to be the good guys? Elizabeth reveals they've staged the coup to start a war. Just then, Twigo makes his cinematic entry, literally cutting the ground from beneath them. But surprise, they all land safely, and it's revealed that our lecherous bar owner is none other than Meliodas, the dragon's sin of wrath himself, one of the 7 deadly sins. He effortlessly fends off Twigo, shocking everyone. Twigo is sent flying into the stratosphere, and Meliodas finally confirms his identity, leaving us all in awe. He agrees to help Elizabeth in her quest, signaling the start of an unlikely but potentially world-saving alliance. To cap off this chaotic turn of events, they're airlifted out of danger by none other than Hawk's mom, another giant pig, in case you're keeping score. Back at Fort Solgalus, holy knights are now in a state of disarray, praying that Twigo's intel about the return of a deadly sin is real this time. And so, the stage is set. The curtain rises on a journey filled with magical battles, complex characters, and a desperate quest for justice. Are you ready to follow Meliodas, Elizabeth, and yes, even Hawk, as they take on the might of the holy knights? Buckle up, you're in for the ride of your life. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. Which is the funniest anime? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out in a future video. Episode 2. Now let's set the scene with a flashback. Holy knights storm the royal throne room in Lions, and our 3rd princess, Elizabeth, narrowly escapes. The stakes are high, and the coup is a haunting backdrop as we transition back to the present. Meliodas, ever the pragmatist, wastes no time in integrating Elizabeth into the operations of the Boar Hat. He makes her a waitress, which is not just a ploy to fill a staffing gap, but a strategic move to gather intel on the Holy Knights and the whereabouts of the remaining 7 deadly sins. Elizabeth wonders aloud about what grievous sins the 7 could have committed to be hated so much, but Meliodas plays his cards close to the chest, providing no straight answer. The Boar Hat Tavern finds its next parking spot outside Burnia Village, a locale renowned for its quality ale. However, the good times are put on hold when our trio discovers that a holy knight, Guilt Hunter, has stuck his sword in the ground, effectively halting the village's water supply. The sword can only be removed by another holy knight, making the situation quite dire. Enter Mead, a young, boastful boy who claims the 7 deadly sins could easily solve this conundrum. His audacity, however, isn't appreciated. The villagers, frustrated with their plight, begin throwing rocks at him, prompting Meliodas to escort the boy back to the Boar Hat. Upon questioning, Mead becomes evasive, leaving Meliodas puzzled. Elizabeth shares a heartwarming anecdote about how she, much like Mead, used to play pranks to get her father's attention. This nudges Mead into revealing the core of his actions. He's an orphan, an outsider trying to fit in. His mischief against Guilt Hunter wasn't for attention, but born out of resentment towards the Holy Knight's mistreatment of the villagers, leading Mead to attempt pulling the sword from the ground himself. Despite the rising tensions, the village elder calms the crowd, reminding them that their real enemy is the Holy Knights, not Mead. A collective attempt to pull the sword proves fruitless, but not to worry. Meliodas walks in and casually frees the blade, allowing the water to flow once again. Gratitude washes over the village like the newly liberated water, and celebrations commence at the Boar Hat. Amid her clumsy attempts at waitressing, Elizabeth gets wind of the Forest of White Dreams, a place even holy knights dare not tread. A potential lead, perhaps? Meanwhile, at Fort Sol Galos, word reaches Guilt Hunter that his sword has been removed, prompting him to launch a long-range spear attack on Burnia Village. Meliodas senses it, steps out, and not only catches the spear, but redirects it with pinpoint accuracy back to the fort, nearly taking Guilt Hunter's head off in the process. It's clear that Guilt Hunter will be on their tail, so Meliodas concludes that they need to make themselves scarce. Elizabeth suggests the Forest of White Dreams as a hiding place, and Meliodas, intrigued, considers the likelihood of finding another sin there. Episode 3. Our adventurers finally arrive at the enigmatic Forest of White Dreams, a place so fraught with danger that even holy knights prefer to steer clear. After wandering aimlessly for over 3 hours, they stumble upon a conundrum: multiple copies of Hawk, their talking pig companion. Each copy insists on being the real deal, but Meliodas quickly defeats them with little effort. Unfazed, the mysterious creatures morph into copies of Elizabeth next. To identify the real Elizabeth among the duplicates, Meliodas devises a quick test. He instructs them to perform various actions, ultimately revealing the imposters when they jump into the air, while the real Elizabeth stays grounded. In a swift attack, Meliodas vanquishes these shape-shifting nuisances, identified as prankster imps. The imps retreat, leading the group straight to Diane, another member of the 7 deadly sins. Initially, the imps had taken Meliodas for a holy knight, thus their hostilities. Upon waking, Diane, mistaking Meliodas for an enemy, grabs him only to recognize him as her captain. Hawk and Elizabeth quickly learn that she is the sin of envy, but her joyful reunion is cut short when she sees Elizabeth and jealously hurls Meliodas away, leaving a trail of destruction in the forest. Diane's emotional turmoil only settles when she learns the purpose of their quest. With Meliodas confessing a lack of memory about the events from 10 years ago, Diane fills in some blanks. She recounts being summoned along with the other sins by the great holy knight Zarathus, only to find him dead upon their arrival. This setup led to them being labeled traitors, besieged by the kingdom's knights. Diane, now understanding the gravity of their mission, agrees to join the search for the remaining sins. Their reunion is short-lived as they are ambushed by Guilt Hunter, the holy knight who had cursed Burnia Village. He incapacitates the group with rings of electricity. Elizabeth recognizes Guilt Hunter as someone who was like an elder brother to her, and is horrified to learn of his cruel actions. Diane demands that he lift the spell, but he nonchalantly kicks Hawk aside and interrogates Meliodas about the sin's whereabouts. His motive becomes clear: revenge for his father Zarathus, and a desire to surpass him. Not one to stay down, Meliodas breaks free from the electrical trap and draws his sword. He fends off Guilt Hunter's first attack, but is struck down by a second. Assuming Meliodas is on the brink of death, Guilt Hunter inquires about his last words. Meliodas seizes this moment to extract valuable information, the locations of two more sins, Ban and King. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Meliodas springs back into action, ready to continue the battle. Episode 4. Just as Meliodas learns the whereabouts of two more of the 7 deadly sins, Ban and King, from Guilt Hunter, he immediately switches gears, effortlessly dodging the Holy Knight's subsequent attacks. The priority is to regroup and find the missing sins. Diane intervenes at a critical moment, catching Guilt Hunter in her massive hands and hurling him away when he scorches her armband with an electric discharge. Guilt Hunter lands in a chapel, injuring innocent civilians and clergy who had been praying for divine intervention against the Holy Knights. Unperturbed by the destruction he caused, Guilt Hunter remains focused on his mission. With Guilt Hunter temporarily out of the picture, Meliodas and his companions ponder their next move while riding atop Hawk's mother. They settle on heading to Base Dungeon, closer but also home to the Weird Fangs, a group of knights. Elizabeth expresses concern over Meliodas' injury sustained from Guilt Hunter, which he casually shrugs off. But her worry proves valid when Meliodas is later found unconscious inside the boar hat. Meanwhile, at Base Dungeon, the Weird Fangs serve as the guards ensuring that Ban, the fox's sin of greed, remains imprisoned. Despite his grim surroundings and the metal rods impaling his body, Ban remains unbroken, even humming a tune to himself. The quest to reunite the 7 deadly sins grows ever more perilous and complicated. While enemies like Guilt Hunter pose significant threats, the internal struggles of our heroes also come into play. With Meliodas down and the next destination fraught with danger, the stakes for Elizabeth, Diane, and Hawk continue to escalate. Even imprisoned and tortured, Bond's indomitable spirit suggests that the Holy Knights have seriously underestimated the resolve of the 7 deadly sins. Episode 5. Golgius, one of the Holy Knights, launches a stealth mission to recover Meliodas' sword and kidnap Elizabeth. However, Golgius severely underestimates Meliodas. Despite the latter's apparent unconscious state due to poison, he awakens radiating a powerful aura that sends Golgius fleeing. This moment speaks to Meliodas' extraordinary resilience, and it's a glimpse into the raw power that the 7 deadly sins possess, reinforcing the idea that these are not ordinary foes the Holy Knights are dealing with. Afterwards, Meliodas and Elizabeth proceed towards Bast Dungeon, but their journey is complicated by an attack from Diane, who has fallen under the influence of a mysterious bell. This subplot introduces an element of mystical control and illusion, ramping up the complexity and risk of the character's quest. Diane, typically a trusted ally, now becomes a threat. The same bell that ensnared her also affects Meliodas, leading to a chaotic battle between the two friends. This turn of events is deeply unsettling, as it underlines the length to which their enemies will go to stop them. It also adds layers of psychological drama to the story. Meanwhile, in Beast Dungeon, Bond's appearance adds another layer of intrigue. We find him wandering the prison, having dealt with Holy Knight Jericho. Just when it seems Ban might escape, he's ambushed by Jude of the Weird Fangs and stabbed in the chest. This moment teases the viewer about Ban's seemingly indestructible nature, as he remains unfazed by what would be a fatal wound for any normal person. Episode 6. The chaos continues with Meliodas and Diane still in the throes of a hallucination-induced battle. Spurred by the bell's sound, Elizabeth desperately tries to snap them out of it, succeeding momentarily before the spell is reinitiated. The story takes another dark twist with the introduction of Holy Knight Frisia, who threatens to kill innocent shepherds caught in the crossfire. Elizabeth bravely steps in, taking heavy injuries. Her courage here is pivotal. It not only saves lives, but serves as a powerful counterpoint to the destructive forces around her. The plot thickens when it is revealed that one of the shepherds is, in fact, Ruin, another Holy Knight. Ruin had been manipulating events, including the hallucination-inducing bell. As he begins to physically assault Elizabeth, she manages to knock off the bell, breaking its spell. This act showcases her growing courage and capability, emerging as more than just a damsel in distress. Meliodas and Diane regain their senses, and each faces off against Ruin and Frisia, respectively. Both are defeated, demonstrating again the sheer power and skill of the 7 deadly sins. Meanwhile, back in Base Dungeon, Ban reveals his resilience by overpowering Jude despite the earlier stab wound, further emphasizing the unique qualities that make the sins nearly undefeatable. The episode culminates in the team entering Bast Dungeon, only for Golgius to trap them with an eternal seal spell. However, the reunion of Meliodas and Ban is so powerful that it shatters the prison and breaks the spell, showcasing the might of their friendship and setting up anticipation for more team reunions. Later, the team enjoys a meal, but an omen in the sky forewarns of impending disaster. Back in Lions, it's revealed that King, another of the 7 deadly sins, is not only alive but in cahoots with Guilt Hunter, setting the stage for even more complexity and potential betrayals in this multi-layered narrative. Episode 7. The day begins routinely, with Bon rousing from a dream as Hawk summons everyone for breakfast. However, Elizabeth finds herself next to a rope-bound Meliodas, a precaution against his wandering hands, Hawk jestingly explains. As they break their fast, conversation naturally turns toward their next destination, the capital of the dead, the rumored location of King, one of the missing sins. Meanwhile, Ban drifts into slumber, his thoughts swirling around his previous attempts to obtain the elixir of immortality from the Fountain of Youth. Each try is thwarted by a mysterious young woman named Elaine, the fountain's guardian. After several failed endeavors, the two eventually strike up a conversation. Ban learns that removing the water would lead to the death of the forest, and so he abandons his quest, opting instead for a connection with Elaine. The group eventually arrives in a village said to be nearest to the capital of the dead. They decide to split up and collect information on both the elusive capital and their missing comrade, King. Bon stumbles upon a pair of siblings, Ellen and Luigi, and strikes a deal, some food for some clues. Just as they begin to engage, an interruption crashes in. King, who lunges at Bon with a weapon. A fight erupts but is cut short when King spots Diane and, flustered, makes a hurried exit. Following their meal, Ellen discloses the secret to entering the capital of the dead. A priceless memory shared with the deceased will open the path. The group tries to conjure memories potent enough to grant them access, but to no avail. Finally, it's Bon's recollection of a moment spent with Elaine that opens the ethereal doorway. Unbeknownst to them, King sneaks in their wake, blending into the ethereal fog. Upon their arrival, Bon spots a figure resembling Elaine and gives chase, King hot on his heels. Back in the village, the siblings look on in awe as the adventurers vanish into the capital, but their amazement is short-lived. A shadowy figure emerges, a mysterious female holy knight, confirming that the capital of the dead is more than mere legend. Episode 8. We find ourselves on the edge of 2 worlds, the physical world and the capital of the dead. In the latter, the atmosphere is charged with tension and latent menace, as King harbors a burning grudge against Ban for his relationship with his sister, Elaine. King's resolve solidifies, and he petrifies Bon in a chilling act of vengeance. However, the spirit of Elaine intervenes, reversing the petrification, leaving King in a state of bewilderment, and leaving us to ponder the profound connection between Bon and Elaine. Back in the village, the mysterious holy knight from the previous episode reveals herself as Gila. She intimidates the siblings Ellen and Luigi, and gains entry to the capital of the dead. Once inside, she wastes no time in confronting Meliodas and the rest of the crew. The ensuing clash between Meliodas and Diane against Gila kicks off a tumultuous battle that sends ripples, both metaphorical and literal, through the capital of the dead. These tremors disrupt Ban and King's charged confrontation, compelling Bon to lend his combat prowess to Meliodas and Diane's fight against Gila. Back in the secluded area, where King is left alone with the spirit of his sister Elaine, a new turn of events unfolds. Hawk, carting Elizabeth along, arrives just in time to witness King's internal struggle. Elizabeth, determined to aid her friends, attempts to wrest a spear from the ground as a makeshift weapon. Inspired by her tenacity and further moved by his sister's plea to aid Bon, King finally chooses his path. He abandons his vendetta against Bon and rushes to the aid of the embattled 7 deadly sins. Despite Bon's arrival, the battle against Gila is far from an easy win. Gila's formidable strength poses a relentless challenge to the sins, even when their numbers are bolstered. It is only with the arrival of King that the tide seems to shift, although what that shift may bring remains tantalizingly uncertain. Episode 9. The events that transpire in Vizel, a bustling town renowned for its annual fighting festival, are laced with intrigue and impending conflict. Meliodas, Ban, and King arrive in Vizel, with their eyes set on a prize of immense value, Diane's sacred treasure, Gideon. However, complications arise almost immediately. Due to an ancient incident, giants are strictly forbidden from participating in the festival. Left with little choice, Diane stays behind with Elizabeth, creating an opportunity for some long-awaited girl time. In stark contrast to the jovial atmosphere of the festival, dark machinations are taking place elsewhere. Jericho and Twigo find themselves in an underground lair, summoned by Hendrickson. He presents them with a diabolical proposition: to drink demons' blood and obtain overwhelming power, albeit at the risk of death if their bodies reject the blood. Undeterred by the perilous stakes, both warriors consume the blood. While Jericho thrives, her body accepting the newfound power, Twigo meets an untimely end, his body unable to handle the potent infusion. Back in Vizel, the tension is palpable as Meliodas, Ban, and King prepare to engage in the festival's battles. Their singular focus on winning back Gideon underscores the importance of sacred treasures in the power dynamics of the 7 deadly sins. Just moments ago, King single-handedly overwhelmed Gila, using his sacred treasure, Chastifol. The feat leaves a lasting impression on the group, most notably Elizabeth, who can't help but express awe at King's display of power. King humbly points out that had either Meliodas, Ban, or Diane possessed their own sacred treasures, their victory over Gila would have been achieved with ease. His words ignite an undercurrent of urgency as the quest to reclaim the missing sacred treasures suddenly gains newfound importance. King's comment on sacred treasures not only underscores the tangible power these relics hold, but also serves as a foreshadowing of the challenges that lie ahead. It's clear that the absence of these treasures places our heroes at a distinct disadvantage. This highlights the team's vulnerabilities and implies that the retrieval of these lost artifacts is not just an aim but a necessity. As each sin comes to terms with the implications, the quest to reclaim the missing treasures is thrust into the spotlight, revealing itself as an indispensable subplot in the overarching narrative. Amidst all this, a poignant yet ephemeral moment transpires between Ban and Elaine in the capital of the dead. The brief respite allows Bond to reminisce and find solace in his memories of Elaine, further deepening the enigmatic bond between them. Their interaction is abruptly cut short, but the emotional weight of their exchange lingers. On their departure from the ethereal capital, an astonishing revelation emerges. Ellen and Luigi, the siblings who had guided them, are unmasked as spirits, adding yet another layer of complexity to the episode's events. As Meliodas, Ban, and King set foot in the fighting ring, the stakes are unmistakably high. Not only must they win back Diane's sacred treasure, but they must also confront the unknown potential of foes who, like Jericho, may have augmented their strength through demonic means. The festival in Vizel thus serves as an intersection for multiple threads of the narrative, from the quest for sacred treasures to the foreshadowing of darker, more powerful enemies. With each new challenge, the 7 deadly sins are pushed further, but also reconcile with their own personal demons and limitations. It is through these trials that the team's bonds are tested, their weaknesses exposed, and their resolve fortified. And as the curtains draw to a close on this chapter, Episode 10. In the outskirts of Vizel, Elizabeth and Diane find themselves in a woodland expanse, scavenging for anything that might serve as sustenance. Their exploration takes an unforeseen turn when Elizabeth encounters a purple mushroom creature, massive, strange, and intriguing. Her cry captures Diane's attention, who promptly arrives and taps the creature, resulting in a burst of pink smoke that envelops them both. Within Vizel's crowded arena, a tense atmosphere settles as the elimination rounds commence. The rules are simple. Eject your opponent from the ring. Of those competing, 8 would eventually emerge as finalists. The roster is eclectic, featuring Holy Knights Griamore and Hauser, the enigmatic Matrona. Suspense charges the air as each matchup is announced, culminating in the climactic face-off between Meliodas and Bon. Matrona's duel against Griamore ignites the series of battles. As Matrona discards her cloak, revealing Elizabeth's familiar clothing beneath, Meliodas' suspicions peak. When Matrona gains victory by launching Griamore out of the ring, her true identity as Diane is uncovered. King inquires about her diminished size, leading Diane to recount their bizarre encounter with the chicken matango mushroom creature, which apparently shrank them upon feeling threatened. Hauser and Taizu grapple in their own battle, where Hauser unveils a unique ability that propels his opponent out of the ring. In the stands, he later meets Griamore and Veronica, learning their intention, finding Elizabeth. Meanwhile, King faces Cain Barzad, suffering defeat by being pushed out of the ring, perhaps distracted by the existential realizations he's been wrestling with. The final duel, Meliodas versus Bon, holds the crowd's gaze, electric with anticipation. This confrontation is a nuanced dance between 2 old friends, imbued with a blend of rivalry, camaraderie, and tacit understanding of each other's skills and limitations. It serves as a poignant reminder of the complexity of their relationships within the seven deadly sins, a complexity that Hauser starts to grasp as he learns from Griamore and Veronica who exactly he's been sharing the stage with. This episode unfurls multiple layers of intrigue and complexity, threading through its narrative both conflict and exposition. It casts a new light on the importance of identity, whether concealed under a cloak or revealed through battle. Diane, shrouded as Matrona, reminds us of the fluidity of identity, how it can be both a mask and a revelation. Her unexpected transformation, triggered by an innocuous touch to a mushroom, serves as a compelling metaphor for vulnerability. One moment, she's a giant, a warrior, and the next, she's just another contender in the ring, yet her essence remains unchanged. The duels in the arena not only serve as thrilling spectacles, but also as reflections of the character's inner turmoil and ambitions. Griamore's defeat isn't just a loss in a tournament, but a moment that likely triggers a period of self-reflection. Hauser's victory, on the other hand, is as much a testament to his skill as it is a preamble to the conflict he will face upon learning the true identities of his fellow competitors. King's defeat, while seemingly trivial in the scope of the tournament, adds another layer to his complex relationship with his past and his responsibilities. And so, each clash within the ring mirrors a larger struggle, the struggle of reconciling one's identity amid layers of deception, duty, and desire, or King struggles with his duties and his past. As the ring clears and the crowd disperses, questions loom large. What are the ramifications of Hauser discovering the Sin's identities? What will become of Elizabeth and Diane, now vulnerable and diminished in size? And how will these personal revelations and defeats, so vividly showcased in the arena, shape the characters as they venture forward? Episode 11. The atmosphere is electric as Meliodas and Ban square off, swords gleaming under the Vizel sun. The crowd holds its breath. A clash of metal on metal rings out, each warrior matching the other's strikes with uncanny precision. In a fateful twist, Ban siphons Meliodas' powers, a glint of victory in his eyes. But Meliodas retaliates with a strength no one expects, grabbing and crushing Ban's wrist and propelling him out of the ring. King and Diane, watching from the sidelines, share a glance, troubled by the dark intensity they glimpse in Meliodas' eyes. Next, Diane and Hauser step into the circle, each a living emblem of their respective realms, earth and wind. Diane passes the pocket-sized Elizabeth to Meliodas for safekeeping, then returns her focus to the impending duel. Hauser's tornadoes burst forth, swirling menacingly around Diane, who masterfully sidesteps them, conscious of not tearing Elizabeth's borrowed clothes. When Hauser finally unleashes a full-fledged cyclone, Diane meets it with the elemental power of her heavy metal form, putting an end to the battle. Soon after, Meliodas faces Cain Barzad, an old man with a mysterious connection to Danafor, a kingdom now lost to history. As their swords cross, Cain confronts Meliodas about his past, the woman he loved, and the kingdom he's accused of betraying. With a heaviness in his eyes, Meliodas denies betraying Danafor or Liz. He vows to protect what he holds dear, earning a forfeit from Cain and a pass to the finals. The last round unfolds as a charged match between Meliodas and Diane, who struggle with unresolved tensions in their relationship. Diane is spurred into a passionate fight by some ill-timed jeers from the audience, accusing Meliodas of being a womanizer. Her swings become more powerful, her steps heavier, as her frustrations manifest through her giant mallet. Meanwhile, outside Vizel, three ominous figures, Gila, Jericho, and Marmus, draw near. Jericho's eyes shimmer with anticipation, impatient to unleash her newly acquired power. Unbeknownst to the tournament contestants, their next battle might come sooner than they think, and it promises to be far more perilous than any duel in the ring. Episode 12. The atmosphere crackles with tension as Diane's powerful fists relentlessly pummel Meliodas. Ignoring his pleas of innocence about the jeering women, her anger seems boundless. But then, without warning, both fighters freeze, locked in a tableau of battle. Meliodas takes this surreal moment to warn the crowd that Vizel will soon be a battlefield, and they must evacuate within a minute. The crowd's laughter turns to panic as Guila, Jericho, and Marmus burst onto the scene, vindicating Meliodas' warning. Jericho lunges at Ban, slashing him mercilessly. To Ban's horror, his wounds do not heal. Simultaneously, Gila engages Meliodas, overpowering him with her devastating chain reaction technique. When King discovers Ban and Meliodas lying unconscious, he barely avoids Gila's attack before defeating both her and Jericho. In a steely voice, he orders Hawk to safeguard Ban and Meliodas, while he interrogates the fallen foes. Elsewhere, Diane learns that her sacred treasure, Gideon, is missing and feels a pang of loss. Hauser appears to confront her for past misdeeds, but a sudden attack from Marmus sends her tumbling into a ravine. Hawk successfully ushers Elizabeth, Ban, and Meliodas to safety. As Elizabeth prays over her fallen comrades, she miraculously returns to her normal size. The reunion is cut short when Veronica and Gryamore stumble upon them. While scolding Elizabeth for her choices, Veronica activates a goddess amber, trapping Meliodas inside. Elizabeth snatches the jewel and Meliodas' sword, demanding his release, but her plea goes unanswered. In a grim twist, Bond threatens to kill Veronica if Elizabeth isn't released. Meanwhile, King's battle against Guila and Jericho takes an unexpected turn when Love Helm, revealed to be Helbram, intervenes. Despite his initial upper hand, Helbram's dark energy makes it clear that this fight is far from over. The tension reaches its peak when Ban is incapacitated by Jericho, freeing Veronica from his deadly grip. Just as Gryamore is about to release Elizabeth into the custody of Guila and Jericho, Veronica heroically intercepts an explosive attack meant for her sister, sustaining fatal injuries. As she dies in Elizabeth's arms, her last act shatters the binds of sisterly discord, leaving Elizabeth in a haze of sorrow and remorse. All seems lost until the goddess Amber cracks open, liberating Meliodas in an eruption of dark energy. His eyes ablaze, Meliodas stands amidst the shattered remnants of the jewel, ready to rejoin the battle. To ensure you don't miss out on the next leg of this enthralling adventure, be sure to like and subscribe.